Well, what was that? What was that I just played? My last video called Muhammad the Palestinian. I was telling you guys how I got completely obsessed with Arabic music. I just wanted to play Arabic music. I had been a composer. I'd studied composition in college. I had written some pieces, not a lot, but enough to qualify as a composer, a string quartet, a few other things. And that had been my ambition, but the oud so compelled me, this whole new world of music, that briefly I thought, well, this is all I want to do. I just want to be an oud player. But eventually I figured out that, there are a lot of Arab oud players in the world. And they play Arabic music on the Arabic oud very well indeed. And it's unlikely that I could really compete with people that are born to this instrument, so to speak. And maybe I could. Maybe if I worked really hard, I could. But should I? I mean, what do I bring to the picture that is uniquely part of me? I think that's a question that every musician has to ask. Everybody deals with this question, and it really doesn't matter what you're playing. It doesn't matter if you're playing something from your culture, from somewhere else. How much of you are you going to allow into your music? This is a question everybody has to face. I can bring a Western influence into what I play on the oud, and I can compose things that combine the heritage of the oud, the basis of the oud in Arabic culture, with what I am and what I know and what I have. And anyway, isn't that what these great Arab musicians of the 20th century were doing? Muhammad Abdul Wahab, he's the classic prime example. I started to write these pieces like the one that you just heard. That's really not an oud thing there so much. That kind of comes from guitar a little bit. And that's kind of what I was thinking. But at the same time, that's oud. That's you can't get that sound on a guitar. You can't get it on a lute. That's the oud sound. That is fascinating to bring these together. Munir Bashir did this. Farid Al-Atrash did this. Rabi Abu Khalil, Anwar Ibrahim, these guys, they were doing this more recently, and there's many more that are doing that right now. So, yeah, I gave myself permission to do that. But here's what I found. When I started to write these pieces, I found that a lot of them had a Spanish sound to them. Not all of them. I'll play you guys some that have almost like a Central Asian sound later on. But I was writing a lot of Spanish stuff on the oud. And of course, Munir Bashir had brought a Spanish thing into his playing, and some other players had done that too. That was cool, and I began to understand that there was this thing called Al-Andalus, and in Arabic civilization, this is a thing in Arab civilization. My Arab friends, when they talked about Andalus, they had a particular conception. I picked up on that vibe. So yeah, Spanish influenced music on the oud. But then I'd get a gig and I'd go and I'd play it, And in between Fairuz and Kulthum and a Samai and a Longa, I would play one of these things, and it was kind of like, it would kind of fall flat a little bit, you know. Because if I was playing for a room full of, you know, Americans, then it was like, okay, why is he playing guitar on that instrument? Because that's not a guitar. And if I was playing for a group of Middle Eastern people, a lot of times they just wanted to hear the classics. They just wanted to hear what they knew, you know. And as I began to think about this conundrum, you know, again, this is something that every composer deals with, you know. How do I create a context for my music? How is that done? And in the midst of this, I was doing other things. I got into writing orchestral music and doing that quite a bit. And I thought, well, this music needs a context. Well, what if I give it a context? Can I do that? Well, why not? Well, what is the context? Well, you know, you kind of give a piece of context when you give it a little name, a social context, unless you call it Oud piece number 1. And I suppose that's a context too. That's the context that says, I am an academic musician and I'm not about to let any emotion show, right? But when a jazz composer, a jazz writer, puts a name on a piece, you know, and he calls it, you know, when he names it after his girlfriend or when he names it after a place he grew up in, then that's a context. That's a display of emotion. And it grounds the piece in something that it gives the listener a little something to grab onto, you know. And listeners appreciate that, by the way. So at first I was just giving them names, Bertucal, Fantasia, Cordoba, things like this. But around about 2016, 2017, I got the idea. Well, I've written a couple novels now. What if I was to write a novel inspired by these pieces? And so when I'm playing the piece, I could tell people, well, hey, you know, this is a story. It's about these characters. Oh, and by the way, you can buy this book. Here it is. You know, here's copies. You know, they're for sale. You know, and I started to think about it that way. And this really kind of set off a revolution in my mind of what is possible with music that's never been done before. I actually looked it up. Are there any novelists that have ever written music as well? And it turns out there are. In particular, Anthony Burgess, who I knew was a novelist, but I didn't know that he also was a symphonic composer. Wow, really cool. I don't think he ever combined the two before, though. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. But this is where we are. So the title of this video is Project Trace. And that's what Project Trace is. You're going to be hearing more Spanish-inspired, Spanish-Arab fusion on my instrument, on this channel. And you're going to be hearing about these books that I've been writing. And the 3 concertos that I'm currently composing to go along with the 3 volumes of the series itself, which is about the fall of Granada. Of course, that's kind of vague. The fall of Granada. Okay, it's a book about the fall of Granada. Well, you can't just talk about the rocks and the walls and the gates. There's got to be characters. What kind of characters are we going to have about the fall of Granada? Well, what if there was a Spanish Catholic character and an Arab Muslim character and a Jewish Spanish character, Jewish Spanish Arab character, Jewish Catholic Muslim, and their friends? In Granada? Were there Christians, Catholics in Granada? Yes, there were. They were called renegados and desperados. Were there Jewish people in Granada? Yes, absolutely there were. Were there Muslim people? Well, of course, the Sultan was Muslim and his whole court was Muslim and so on. But the three faiths and the 3 peoples were very much a part of what was going on there. 3 characters who are in Granada and they see it fall, and they're friends. Well, how can they be friends? Because, you know, the Catholics are fighting the Grenadans. How can they be friends? Well, what if they're all kids? Because, kids don't really understand politics, and they just want to play. They just want to be friends. They don't really understand when somebody tells them you have to hate these people, or we're going to conquer them, and we're going to take away their houses, or these people are evil. They don't really understand, And maybe that's worth looking at, So, just very briefly, Trace is the story of three friends: Amir Amiel, Walid Gharnati, and Rui Diaz, who is Spanish, and actually he grew up in Bruges, but at the age of 9, I think it's 9, he comes to Granada during a brief lull when Granada and Castile actually make peace. In 1486, the Duke Fadrique makes peace with the Sultan of Granada. And so there's a window there. So Trace is the story of these three characters, three boys that become best friends in Granada. One of them is Jewish, one of them is Catholic, and one of them is Muslim. And they are friends, and they are best friends because they're boys, and they don't know any better. And through their eyes, we see the last Spanish Muslim kingdom come to an end. The city of Granada on January 4th, 1492. It's really fascinating history, and I've tried to write an interesting story. So that's kind of the context for a lot of this music that you're going to hear here, and we'll see what you guys think of it. All right, Project Trace, officially announced. Take care.